call the select board meeting of
Recording
Tuesday.
in progress.
We'll call the select board meeting of Tuesday, August 9th to order. And the first item is approval of the agenda.
Moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any changes to the agenda? I will note there's an addition as item 3E in the town manager's report, some correspondence from Andrew Sandbrook regarding the airport, and we added item 5 to the agenda, which is a request from the Middlebury Farmers Market for a public assemblage permit for Triangle Park.
Also, Ryan, we'd like to postpone number 11, the Vermont Community Development Program, codes and policies, pending further review.
Okay, and so another change is postponement of item number 11 pending some further review. Is there any other requested change or? Hearing none with those 3 changes, all in favor of approving the amended agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, next is approval of the consent agenda.
I'll move it.
Second.
Moved and seconded. There is a lot in here. In the town manager's report, there's a number of different communications from, in regards to the airport. And our plan is to take up the airport discussion at both, because there's more developing, but also at their request, of the request of MANA, a little later on, not tonight. It'll actually be an agenda item. So I know there was a letter put out on Front Porch Forum, but it is not to be an agenda item this evening. And if anybody's curious what's going on with the Washington Street Waterline project, there's an update in there for you. Keep you in the loop. Anything else anybody would like to add to this?
When was the airport postponed to?
It hasn't been scheduled yet.
Okay, thanks.
Are you here for that too?
I'm here for.
You're always here.
I love it. Okay, all in favor of approving the consent agenda as drafted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Voila.
And then is citizen comments. I know somebody's here for citizen comments. Okay, I think right behind you. Come on up first and.
Yeah.
Thank you, sorry, I'm new to this.
It's okay.
All good.
We just,
Sure.
yeah, we just ask you say your name and so that they can go into the minutes appropriately and keep them brief.
Okay, my name is Jason Murray, resident of 223 Airport Road. Why I'm here today is because I hear there's a big plan for the airport. Well, I live on that road. It's very dangerous, a lot of people speeding. There's no lights on the road. There's not a center line. There's no breakdown lanes. I've contacted Chief Hanley and the town manager for the last, I don't know, since I moved in 2014. People come and go real fast there. There's a guy in a Corvette, there's cars that come late at night. I don't know what their activities are, but they're racing down through there in excess of 50 miles an hour. I've had animals hit there. I've almost been hit. My wife is here, Pam. She's almost been hit down there. It's a residential area. There's 10 plus houses down there, and there's no safeguards in place for the airport. No speed bumps, no nothing. I called about people speeding down through there. The town responded by increasing the speed limit from 25 to 35 miles an hour.
Yeah, I think it's a different issue than the airport, but
Well, I was
we've
told
heard
to come
it.
here by Mr. Hanley, Chief Hanley, to address these safety concerns, because when Tractor Supply came to town, they had to pay, or there was a safety plan in place for like a breakdown lane, something that they, had to pay for. So I don't think, I'm just here hoping that maybe somebody will hold the airport accountable for the safety measures.
I don't think the airport's the ones that speed, I guess, but,
Yep, they have cars up there, that people that work up there on hot rod cars, and they're racing up down the road. My uncle would be here today because his dog will not come out of the house, and they've had to give it anxiety medicine. Because they purposely, because he's complained, like I have, rev their cars up going down through there. My power line in front of my house has been shot by a high-power rifle because I've been complaining. So I'm just looking to where I need to go to address some safety issues down there on the road.
So you mentioned speeding. Do you know who those people are, the residents in that
A lot of
area?
them are people that come into the airport that fly their planes and their fancy cars, and then they come out in a Corvette, you know, burning sideways down around the corner and then racing down through. I mean, I'm all for the airport. I support the airport. I support the jobs. But I think that somebody needs to be, whether it's the town, the state, somebody needs to be held accountable for some safety measures.
okay,
So I was told to come here, so that's why I'm here.
got it.
Thanks very much.
Street is
Thank
that?
you.
Thank you.
Airport Road?
You said Airport Road, yeah.
Okay, wow.
Laura?
It's right in the corner. It's right in the corner.
Yeah, that's where he lives. I think that's an RV and, okay,
Good place to know.
it's a good straight stretch.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Laura Asermely, and I serve on our Public Health and Safety Committee, so I heard what you said about speeding.
It's referred to you now.
Oh, and we hear it on a lot of roads, and we really try to encourage people to slow down for a safer town. And I noticed in the police log that the police were out monitoring speeding in different zones. And I know that they're short-staffed and they can only get to so much in terms of enforcement. We do have feedback signs that show how fast people are going, and maybe it's worth rotating that in that zone. That might be a possibility. So I'll hold that, you know, and I just want, that's not why I came to speak tonight, but I was listening to what was just said. So I'm here really on behalf of the Middlebury Homelessness Task Force, and I attended the Addison County Housing Coalition meeting recently. I told Brian about this, and I shared this update of the GATA Middlebury resource card, which was a project of the Middlebury Homelessness Task Force, which I told you I was working on. So this is the result, this is the update, so I wanted you to see it. And it's proven to be very helpful, not only for those that are visiting Middlebury or experiencing housing insecurity, but also our merchants downtown that are looking for where to direct people on where to go. To the bathroom, gotta go, that's the essence of it, you know, that's where it started. And we do thank the town for expanding its access to public toilets, both in our public buildings as well as adding portalets. And you can see that on the front page of the resource card. And this resource card is distributed to the agencies that are in the card as well as public buildings. So it's now out there and it's been updated, and I just wanted you to be aware of it. And I also wanted you to hear about two things that I heard from the Housing Coalition meeting. One is that there's a dire need for locker storage, daytime locker storage. And it could be a moneymaker for the town. It could be. And I just want to put it on your radar as something, especially as Amtrak is coming into town. And I'm not sure where that would be or how we would locate it, but it's something that I've just heard more and more about as a need. So I wanted you to be aware of that. So lockers, and it could be daytime or it could be longer term storage, but definitely even just day lockers like you see in airports, you know, or other public transit areas. So that might be something for us to think about. That could also be income producing, as well as here's the second thing, you know, the need for possibly forming a housing task force that would be like the Public Health and Safety Committee, like the Energy Committee, in terms of helping you as we're continuing to address affordable housing and the development at South or Seymour, on Seminary Street. and elsewhere, wherever, but just something to think about, whether that would assist you. So Elise from the Addison County Community Trust told me that it would position the town better for more grants for projects or support, and it could also alleviate you because it's a place you could refer continued research or thinking or public outreach as you're working on this. So I just wanted to share that with you as the other thing that I heard in the Housing Coalition meeting, and that's it.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Laura.
Laura,
Oh,
Laura, just, I noticed that Shaw's, on the west end of their building has a couple of portalets too.
It is, it's good. It's good.
Shaw's does, yeah, and yeah, new for this year, so just letting you know.
Who came up with the gotta? Me. I love it. It's catchy. So, is there anybody else here for something
We
that's not a?
have Judy Weiger-Gross, who's teed up for you.
Get her earbuds in.
Hi, can you hear me?
we can.
Judy,
Can you hear us?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good.
So, one, to in part respond to what Laura said about, traffic, one of the best measures for traffic calming is tree planting and, just planters on the side of the road, in the middle of the road. I mean, it's been documented to help with traffic calming. But my question is, so the Middlebury Farmers Market is currently out on Exchange Street.
Yes.
And I think its attendance has been dwindling. Is it possible for it to move into town?
Do you have,
Is it possible?
hey, Judy, do you have the agenda in front of you? That's our
Yeah.
next agenda item.
Oh, I guess sorry, didn't see that, sorry. And so can I ask one more question?
Yes.
Am I allowed to make comments about the airport tonight or no?
I would prefer not. Our minutes are getting inundated with the airport stuff, and it'd be really nice to keep it central to one discussion chain, and we're going to focus on it on one particular meeting. If you could accumulate all your notes and for us to try to keep everything, the amount of email traffic and citizen comments on that is getting to be difficult to keep straight.
Okay, it was on the agenda for tonight, some kind of like update, but you would prefer that it wait.
It was never on the agenda. It's on the, and this is understanding the way we do business now a little bit. It was on the consent agenda, which is to keep people informed, and it's just to read, and we don't discuss the items in the consent agenda. And so there's a lot of emails on there that pertain to the airport and could be construed to think we were going to take up the airport, but not tonight. Okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
What's that?
Did you get the headset?
Yeah, I did, yes.
That headset working a lot better, Judy?
Oh, it absolutely is. And so I'm so excited about being able to attend to more meetings because you guys just love me attending.
Okay, Judy, I'm
Thanks
going,
so much.
Thank you. Okay, next agenda item is the farmer's market. Public assemblage permit request. Is there anybody here? Please, okay, please come forward. And so on August 8th, Middlebury Farmers Market, Representative Janice McWayne submitted a request for public assemblage permit to relocate the market from the VFW parking lot to Triangle Park. and a portion of the green. So I think I'll let you just explain what you're looking to do, and the select board will rule on it tonight.
Okay, I'm Jasmine Fine, I'm the president, and this is Eric Andrus, and he is the chair of the committee.
Yeah, we have a
So-
site relocation committee that has been active in the past, trying to find the best location for the farmer's market. So that committee was reactivated when we really became alerted to the opportunities presented by moving downtown.
And so their permit just came in this week. I talked to them last week and told them that if they could get it in, we could action it. Now, it will be subject to the public safety review. But as far as our review of it, what they're asking for is approximately 24,000 square foot of space in Triangle Park and the green, which is the same footprint that you see the Thursday's mid-market utilizing. Use of the site from 7:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. every Saturday from May to October. The curbside access for vendor loading and unloading. Ability to cook food and to serve and sell alcoholic beverages, tastings. And access to electricity for some vendors. All of those things are part of similar to what the mid-market is doing. And it's just a matter of making sure that Chief Hanley and Chief Shaw, as well as Bill Kernan, have reviewed it, and everybody's on the same page. We've been talking about having the farmer's market come to town, back into the center of town, and this is pretty exciting that they've decided to do that. So.
Fantastic. Yeah.
I just wanted to note that if our permit is granted, we still have to go through our own process of finalizing a plan and activating certain committees to prepare the work so that we can actually move. But we'll be in touch about our progress on that note.
So you won't be there this Saturday?
Most likely not, but at the pace things have been moving, it's sort of up to the board and the membership whether we continue to sustain that pace of work. I suppose in one scenario, we might not be able to pursue it this season. It sort of depends on what our board of directors decides.
Okay.
So we have a contract currently with the VFW that ends April 1st, 2023. So we will have to continue paying rent there, and we have our farmer's market 52 weeks a year.
Yeah.
Which some of us really need. I mean, that is the only day of the week that I get to earn money at my farm, is the 3.5 hours that I'm selling at the farmer's market. The rest of the week I'm getting ready for that. So it's very important that we're able to have it 52 weeks a year, and we're having it 52 weeks a year at the VFW. So even if we come here for the summer market, which we think would be very good for us and for downtown Middlebury with the revitalization, we still need to have a place to go in the winter.
Right, so that arrangement would have to be renegotiated with the VFW, which is currently our only winter option.
Which
So-
is currently happening.
Right.
And it sounds like, frankly, that works. Ours is free. The only thing you would have to do is ensure that your insurance policy name the town in that, and give us.
Yeah, so
That'll be no
we are fully insured now, and what we'll do if we are accepted here is we will just have our insurance agent do whatever she needs to do to add the town of Middlebury to that insurance policy. But we have to go with the board and the membership to see if they want to leave the VFW during the summer, because we still have to pay the rent, so we have to collect enough table fees from people to be able to pay our bills.
Understand. My pitch to you is I think you'll get more coming downtown just because it's a very, it's an active spot.
I believe that you are
I think you're gonna
correct.
get more people to the farmer's market, so that'll draw more vendors. And the only reason why I say that is because the amount of interest in that Thursday's mid-market has been surprising.
Phenomenal, yeah.
We thought we wanted 12 to 15 booths, and I think last week we had 50. So, I mean, almost too many.
Right,
So you
right.
kind of got to figure out some controls at this point.
Yeah.
I believe the Health and Safety Board meets as needed.
Yes.
And so we don't want to hold you guys up if you do want to come this summer, if that's the feeling of your organization.
Well, I don't think it
Well,
has to go to
I
the
was
board.
Or it's not health and
proposing
safety, it's-
that it would be
Oh,
the chiefs.
perfect.
Doing a site review.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
With the organizers.
Never mind. All good.
Any other questions?
I'm actually excited. This is what we needed. We've been wanting you guys downtown for a while now. And I want to acknowledge the efforts of Karen and Nan and BMP and
Absolutely.
a whole bunch of us who are working in the background, trying to get you guys, and I'm very happy that you're here.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that we give them a lot of credit too for showing the way for us, and very much hope that BMP and Middlebury Farmers Market can collaborate and perhaps issue a joint press release once new plans are announced. So that's our thinking.
Yeah, I agree. This is really exciting. It'll bring me back to the farmer's market, because I haven't been there in years.
That's,
So-
yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. If only question, Esther, did you have any questions at all? Okay, if all the questions have been answered, then what's the pleasure of the board?
I'll move to approve a public assemblage permit for the Middlebury Farmers Market to relocate to Triangle Park and the Green, pending the receipt of the required certificate of insurance and notification that any identified public safety issues and/or site setup issues have been satisfactorily addressed.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. What happened to Esther?
She's so enthusiastic, she overpowered us.
Okay. But we have enough to, I can't register her vote. So, Eric, Janice, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All
Thank you.
approved, and, like we said, just the chief and a few people just need to do the site, review with you.
Okay,
That's usually pretty easy to do.
yeah, we'll be in touch.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, Jen has been a big supporter of this, getting them back down.
That was part of the rationale for the design of the
Right.
hardscape, so that
Right.
we could do, not just for that, but for all events, so we
Right.
can have more events.
Yeah.
You're back. Did you want to register a vote on the farmer's market?
Sorry, Nick and kids at the same time. Absolutely, full support. So
Okay.
happy you're coming.
Next is approval of the application for first, second-class liquor licenses and outdoor consumption permits for K3K LLC doing business as Shiretown Marketplace, right down the street here. Ann Webster's requesting the board's approval of application submitted at 54 College Street. The outside consumption permit application describes this consumption area as a 30 by 20-foot space on the front patio, which will be enclosed with wood planter boxes, creating only 2 points of entry. The consumption permit will be from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. year-round. And Chiefs Hanley and Shaw have signed off on the required public safety inspection. Any questions? And if not, pleasure of the board.
I'll move to approve a first and second-class liquor license and outside consumption permit application for K3K LLC, doing business as Shiretown Marketplace located at 54 College Street.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
Do we need to make a motion for the creamy stand to come back there too?
Yeah, it's part of the plan.
Okay.
So that is my business.
Oh, it is?
It is.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
And we may have creamies by next Friday.
All
Wow,
right.
At the
fantastic.
health department there, I've got the Department of Ag application in today, so I should get a call from them early next week, and
I gotta put that on my calendar.
Department of Ag will clear us
Great,
over the phone. So
great. Well, congratulations.
thank you very
Creamy.
much.
We're looking forward to you coming back.
Yes.
I did notice the hours for public consumption. You're gonna have some early birds there? or you have to-
It's primarily for Saturday brunch service. Is really what we're doing. It's a just draft service, a couple beers on draft, a couple wines on draft.
Yeah.
That's really, it's pretty limited. But we really want to focus on, especially in the more desirable months, is doing Saturday brunch service. And there will be, when it's nice out, we'll have, decent lunch crowds from time to time. So we figured if we have a nice space and nice weather,
Yeah.
it should be pretty successful. Nice
Well,
place to sit out.
That has a real history of success in that location. Obviously not most recent, but over a long period of time, that's been a very successful location. We wish you well and are excited because a lot of us use it as meeting space.
Right.
Yes.
And we're designing, I had met with Andy Nagy at the Congregational Church initially, and he had sort of discussed his use of the space, for, his colleagues and just people in the community. And so we're designing the dining area inside to be very modular so that it's a continuous banquette seat. It's about 30 feet wide with 4 top tables that can be pushed together and sort of made into 8 tops, 10 tops, 12 tops, and then a farm table, a larger format for larger meeting groups. Which would be great.
What are your hours 8 to 4, or are you gonna be open early?
So it's breakfast, lunch, and it's 7 to 3:30. Is going to be kind of our rough hours right now. We'll sort of mold and shape with it as time goes on.
But
The market
creamies will be in the evening.
premies will be 11 to 7 in the height of the season, and the marketplace will be open somewhere in the same. The marketplace will be open when we open for breakfast, and will be open till 6 or 7 o'clock as well. And the marketplace will have ready-to-go foods and things that we prepare in the kitchen, wood-fired items. I just hired a baker that's going to bake full-time in the wood-fired oven. So we'll offer wood-fired baked goods, baguettes, and challah bread and things of that nature in the marketplace as well as in the restaurant.
Yum.
It sounds like you're making some nice renovations to the inside and really taking
It
care
has
of
been a
it.
long 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need places for breakfast.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're all
You don't have any
excited.
place to eat now, do you?
All kinds of good news there.
I never understood why Virgins can have 3 diners and Bristol can have a couple, and Middlebury can't afford one.
This is it.
We have to move on because I'm late for getting us into our public hearing. Number 2 on zoning bylaw amendments. And all documents related to the proposed zoning bylaws amendment can be found for anybody who's watching. 2022 Middlebury zoning and subdivision regulations update. If you go to if you're following along in the meeting minutes, there's a live tab there. There was additional background that was posted. Hopefully you were able to find all of that. Also, Jen met with the Conservation Commission, and there's a letter from them outlining general support for several aspects. So without further ado, in accordance with 24 VSA Chapter 117, Sections 4442 and 4444, the board is conducting the second of 2 planned public hearings this evening to take further questions and comments from the Middlebury community regarding a proposed amendment prepared by the Middlebury Planning Commission to the town's zoning bylaws. Shortly, I will turn the hearing over to Planning and Zoning Director Jen Murray, who will review the revisions made to the draft bylaw amendment following the board's first public hearing on July 12th and take your comments and questions. During her presentation, if you have a question or comment and would like to address the select board, please raise your hand if you are here in the room, or use the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window. I would ask that anyone in the room with a comment to please come forward. as we do in the citizens' comment section, sit at the speaker's table and speak directly into the microphone so our audience at home can hear you clearly. Please state your name, public record, for the public record, and I would ask you keep your comments on topic and under 2 minutes in length. I also like to remind our audience that as an outcome of the discussion of the July 12th public hearing, the Select Board agreed to remove retail cannabis as a defined use in the table of uses found in section 622, paragraph 3 of the zoning and subdivision regulations, and to schedule a separate meeting in the near future to consider the matter after the current bylaw amendment before the board has been adopted. With that in mind, I would ask that you withhold further comment regarding cannabis during tonight's hearing so that we can stay focused on the recommendations that remain in the proposed amendment. In accordance with statute, if the board makes no substantive changes to the proposed bylaw amendment that would require scheduling an additional meeting, we will move directly to considering adoption following the close of this hearing. And with that, I will open the public hearing at 7:32 and turn the meeting over to Jennifer. Jen?
Hey there. So I'm just here to provide support during your second hearing. Overall timeline and context, remember we had a Planning Commission hearing in May, followed by another Select Board meeting on July 12th. The Select Board had some recommendations at that meeting, so the Planning Commission just made some more changes based on the Select Board's recommendations and produced another draft set of bylaws that has been posted on the website and available in the town offices for the requisite 30 days. And here we are at the second and hopefully final public hearing today. If adopted today, the regulations would become effective on August 31st. And that would allow us to go and submit our neighborhood development area designation application in September and hopefully get our NDA approval in October. And as you recall, that NDA designation is a state level designation that provides incentives for developers of all sorts, but particularly developers of affordable housing. So a little extra carrot to try to get them here. Just in general, just spinning really quickly to refresh your memory on what you requested and what we did. You've probably all had a chance to look at this on the website, but basically cannabis definitions and cannabis related uses have been removed entirely from this set of bylaws, as Brian just explained. With regard to outdoor dining, we just removed the entire second paragraph on outdoor dining, anything that had to do with barriers, separation distances. We just removed any extra details and we just left in a very basic paragraph explaining that we're allowing outdoor dining now. We did that because Chief Hanley and the Public Safety Committee were playing around with an ordinance, so there may be a town ordinance that covers this, and we want to just make sure that they have the freedom they need to decide what they need to decide. Then temporary structures for pop-up uses, very small change. We removed the language, it says temporary uses operating 6 hours in a given day, no more than 3 days. That was something we decided right here in live time with Karen Duguay, that we would take out the 6 hours a day and just leave in the no more than 3 days when we're defining what a temporary or pop-up use is. Farmers markets, we took out the 5 hours in duration. Just a note, these are farmers markets that would be on private property. So the farmers market we were just talking about on public property, that's handled with a public assemblage permit and doesn't fall under the auspices of zoning at all. But we took out 5 hours in duration because that felt a little arbitrary. And then for...
Are you going through your slides, and if so, do you want to put them up on the screen?
Yeah, I was going to try to just do it like this, but if you want me to... Okay. I'm just spinning through these really quickly. I want people to be able to see faces and whatnot during the conversation portion. And so then as far as mobile food service, we added an exemption based on your suggestions last time that we try to consider parties and things like that. So now we have an exemption that says a mobile food service associated with an invitation-only private event, like a wedding or reunion, no longer than 3 days in duration, is on our list of exemptions. And a site plan may be required for a review of public safety. Obviously, And then we had for-profit events, like burger nights and festivals must apply for a zoning permit under section 775. And I changed that from for-profit events to other events, just based on some input we recently got that was contemplating nonprofits. So other will include both for-profits and nonprofits. So that's really all I have, really limited, limited changes this time around. We've gone through over 30 planning commission hearings at this point and just worked and reworked the language, deciding between shall and may and and or, and so we gave it a really thorough look. We incorporated input from tons of different stakeholder groups. I met with a lot of people during May. So I feel like it's well supported and well gone over at this point. And the Planning Commission chair apologized she couldn't be here tonight, but she really wanted to ask for your endorsement of these bylaws.
Jan, could you turn off your camera?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
The central business district, is that downtown?
Yep, the central,
Designated downtown or just?
it's within the designated downtown, but it's not all of the designated downtown. So the central business district is pretty much the college campus out to, out to the Congregational Church, that full strip.
And the Merchant Row probably.
And Merchants Row, thank you for that. But not like Mill Street or it includes Bakery Lane too.
Any questions? Questions? No? Then I'll open up, I'm assuming there's some of you that are here about this particular topic. Sure, come on.
Leon Smith. I just wanted to start by saying I'm not here to be confrontational, but I am very direct. I find the process for revision that we have began in May, in which I attended and some other folks attended, to be lacking. I don't feel the end result, particularly of Section 775, is going to be met with open arms by everyone. I just spoke previous to this meeting with Jen, and she assured me that using her discretion and a lot of common sense that they would make right choices. But I am still concerned about the language, particularly how a mobile food unit service is defined as just to accommodate mobile or a temporary food stand. If you look at the Vermont Department of Health, they have a specific definition for what a mobile food unit is. And they also include what is exempted from things like that, like lemonade stands. The Vermont Department of Health definition is, that it's a motorized mobile unit or temporary stand required to be licensed. The reality is a lot of nonprofits and one-offs, like your child selling lemonade on the road, doesn't have to be licensed, provided they operate less than a certain stand. And I think that this, as it's written, is a bit overreach into temporary operations that may occur on a property from time to time. And note that this would prohibit those things in a lot of the zoning districts. So by the way it's written, a food stand that your child popped up to sell brownies in Butt-Off Acres is a food stand that someone could call and say, did they get a permit about for that day? No, they didn't get a permit. I just see that a lot of some of these other issues weren't well discussed. And I think a lot of that comes back to, I don't know all the stakeholders involved, but I know a good number of them that were not necessarily involved. And when we were present in May, were not necessarily looped in to revisions as well as we probably should have been. That said, I know the hour's late, and I know that this is something that could potentially be fixed at later times. if it were possible to kind of put a break on it, and revisit it and line the language up a little bit better with Vermont Department of Health and some other things, that would be great. If not, if there's administrative workarounds that can kind of be agreed upon, that, to me, I think that the purpose of the downtown master plan, which drove this, was to encourage these types of activities, not to add additional layer of rules that are not necessarily in alignment with, like, Vermont Department of Health and so on and so forth. So that's just I've shared some other comments over time, but that's the only thing I wanted to focus on.
Okay, thanks, Leon.
Yeah.
In fact, I will tell you that it is part of our intent is to make it easier, and we made some adjustments depending upon what comes out tonight. I think my desire would be that we roll and accumulate any lessons learned for a next round, because there are some things that are very critical for the town and for some things that are going on that are needed, that they hinge upon getting this moving.
And I understand that.
Yeah.
Jen, so I do not see a definition of mobile food in the zoning, mobile food service, is that right?
Are you looking in the definition section of the?
I'm just doing a word search through here, let me see what all.
I think the intent has always been that it was a drivable rig, is that?
Oh, here we go. A location outside a public street right-of-way used to accommodate mobile or temporary food stands. Definition specifically excludes temporary food stands on public property associated with public assemblage permits. Yeah. I can see a brownie stand issue there. Yeah.
So I think about the process. I mean, the planning commission had a hearing. Was that the first hearing that you guys came? I think it was the planning commission hearing where you guys first turned out with these concerns in May. And we asked, will you come to our next planning commission hearing? And you did. All of you came to the next planning commission hearing. We talked through all of the parts of this. We must have talked 45 minutes about this. And you guys went away, what I thought was happy and satisfied. Then you had a second hearing, and nobody showed up with comments about this at the second hearing. And now here we are at the final hearing, and you've got comments, which I think is really cool. I take exception to the complaints about the process not having been done right. I mean, we really did try to work with you. And I think that if you've had some time to think about it over the last few months and you still have some concerns about it, we should try to work again in the coming year. But I don't think it's so broken now that it's going to hurt anybody. And I can tell you right now on video, and you can call this video up when you see me, I'm not looking to turn down mobile food cart vendors. I'm excited about the prospect. So we just need to make sure that they're safe. That's the primary intent, is to make sure that they're sited in safe locations and that people aren't being mowed down by vehicles. It's that simple.
I think the example of a lemonade stand, a brownie stand, or whatever, we just need to use good common sense when somebody calls and complains. I mean, to go out, if somebody doesn't like some kid selling out because they're a neighbor and they're a grouchy neighbor, and they want to use this, I think we just can't allow them to use this as a reason for us to dispense with the kid activity. And we just need to use good pushback and use good common sense on it, so.
I think it's written with enough discretion in there that we can do that. If it
I
were
think
written
so.
super tight, then we might not be able to do that. But there's enough gray area that we can make sure that we're using our discretion in a responsible way.
I think I saw you, John, shaking your head. Did you want to speak on this?
John McPartland, 53 Washington Street Extension. Jan, I probably could have just called you on this question. I'm a grouchy neighbor. The house next door to me at 13 Washington Street Extension. Sure, it was converted into student housing, and my understanding of the changes would be that student housing would be prohibited in zoning R8. So, yeah, I know, that's why.
I have it here, and I made a slide for that, just in case you and John came tonight, but we have questions.
Student housing is only defined such when it gets to 4.
So student housing is a condition, sorry, you said the R, what, John? 8.
R8.
Yeah, it's prohibited in the R8.
Okay, prohibited. But you only define student housing as when it reaches 4.
Yeah, and much to your chagrin, it's 4 or more students in a unit as opposed to a building. And so that's the trouble next to you, because you have a duplex.
That's your interpretation. We'll talk about it.
Okay. He'll have his turn too, but I think, yeah. So,
So question B, units in R8 that currently house students, they won't be grandfathered in when there's changes. It's just
have
prohibited.
they applied for a rooming house, boarding house designation?
Don't know.
Okay, we should check that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, John, part 2.
John?
Thank you, Brian. And of course, John and I have addressed the group before. I'm John Tenney. And our problems are similar and deal with a single landlord who is housing student athletes from Middlebury College, and they have been disruptive in our neighborhoods. And we're concerned about the difficulty of our lives in those neighborhoods with that going on. And so to back up a little bit, I would say first, having studied through what the work that's been done here, I'm very pleased and think you should be proud of the efforts made to provide more diverse opportunities and to provide more affordable housing. I've worked with that for more than 25 years, and it's very important in the community, and we need to continue doing that. As one who builds housing, I know it all costs too damn much. So the more we can do of that, the better. But in the case of the student housing, we have a problem here. In your standards, your controlling purposes of this document, in item 3, review standards, which applies to your new projects as well as your basis of your zoning decisions, the controlling purpose is pointed out, the character of the neighborhood or area affected. The project shall not have an undue adverse effect on the character of the neighborhood or area affected. Neighborhood means in the same area, nearby, including but not limited to the area within the site and or sound. Character of the neighborhood refers to the distinctive traits, qualities, or attributes, its appearance and essential nature, pattern of uses, and sense of community, the factors which give it identity. A goal of the town plan is to allow for appropriate mixed uses to generally encourage balanced diversity while protecting the essential character of the neighborhoods. The existence of one conditional use in a neighborhood shall not be interpreted as justification for another similar conditional use to be located there. And so what I'm saying is that the rules then made for college students housing in these neighborhoods, in the neighborhood where I live, in the neighborhood where John lives, are out of balance with this controlling purpose, and certainly out of balance with the character of the neighborhoods, and very disruptive in what's done. The number of students that qualify as students being 4 is an entirely arbitrary number. I don't know how that number was ever derived, but it has no basis in any thing that I can see in the document or in previous documents. And it certainly then, as it's been interpreted by the staff, that applies to each unit within a dwelling or other building, means that you get a large critical mass that creates its own problems because of its numbers. I think all of those things are contrary to the purposes of the document as a whole and its controlling purposes, and that they are contrary to your goals for providing diversity and affordable housing in the community, because these students are being taken in because they'll pay a super rent. And it is taking units off the market so that they are not available to the general community at the detriment of the neighborhoods, and in fact are doing harm to the community. The college has the need to house its students. The college also has the ability to provide more housing on its own grounds, and they certainly have the resources to do so. So the college over the years has done away with fraternities and sororities and other types of social housing.
Can I just stop you here for a second?
Yeah.
We're really trying to focus on the document here. And so I understand your concern with the students living out on, but I'm not following what the issue in the controlling document is.
The issue is how students are defined,
Okay.
and how students are liberally allowed to populate the community without controls or bounds.
Does this zoning change liberalize it? Is that what you're arguing? Is that this new zoning change liberalizes the ability to put more students out into communities?
Particularly the interpretation of the staff and how it determines how many can go in a building, I think is arbitrary.
So I think the issue is, let's nug it down. What did we change in the language on that we're trying to look at here?
I would ask that the number be reduced to not more than 2, and that within a dwelling, a residential dwelling, you not have more than 50% of the population of that dwelling be student population. In other words, dilute it.
Okay, and Jen, did we change the ability or lack of ability to have students out in the zoning amendments?
Yeah, what we did was, we used to have student housing tacked into the definition of a rooming or boarding house.
Yep.
Now in the new regulations, we've got a definition for rooming or boarding house still, and then a separate definition for student housing, so that we could restrict student housing in more places and allow rooming and boarding houses in more places. So it's not like just untrammeled sprawl of students, because as John number 1 just demonstrated, like it's prohibited altogether in the R8 and several other districts.
Well, no, it's not prohibited altogether. It's prohibited over 4.
So 16 students next door to me.
Right, when I say student housing, I'm using the definition of student housing.
Yeah, and that in and of itself is misleading, because when it says no student housing, that we think no students. No, it means no more than 4, and you're saying in a unit. So really, the document as written is providing a very wide range of opportunity, too wide a range of opportunity for the students to be housed in the community, when, frankly, the college is not stepping up to monitor and to shepherd those students as it should, and putting that all on the neighborhood and on the community. So,
And on the zoning.
yeah.
Maybe zoning isn't the right tool for
Well-
asking the college to help you guys.
Well, if the college doesn't step up, then we have to step up with controls in order to protect ourselves. That's part of what zoning does. It creates opportunity and it creates controls. So that's what I'm putting, I don't have all the answers,
Yeah,
obviously.
no,
But I
I
want you to appreciate the problem.
I'm just trying to figure out what it is that, and I think I understand what your issue is
Yep.
now.
I want you to appreciate the difficulties we have in the neighborhoods and the threat we have to our good neighborhoods in this. And that we need to put more pressure back and more controls in place in order to balance that out. Okay?
Okay, thanks, John.
Thank you.
I'm sorry? Sure.
So, yeah, I think the wording as it is conflicts with itself to say student housing is prohibited in R8, and yet the building next to me has 4 units, so that could be 16 students, which is way different than prohibited.
Is it still 4 distinct units?
Yes. And there were up to 3 families living there.
Mm-hmm.
And that landlord cut off their heat, removed their propane tank, and they moved out.
So the way, just so so I'm clear in my head, we say it's prohibited, but if a house has less than 4 college students, then we don't consider it college housing, and so then it's therefore not prohibited.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see from there. I'm just gonna share a screen on that definition real quick, and I'm gonna share a screen on that table of uses so you can see what they're talking about just briefly. Not that I wanna take up a ton of time, sorry guys, but
Yeah.
it's important, right?
And I'm just trying to make sure I understand. And another question for you, Jen, and you can wait till you're done bringing that up.
Okay.
If we made a change to this, would you consider that a substantive change or not?
We have to see what the change is.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and you know, and this isn't the first time we've discussed this query, and there's been a lot of discussions that have led to what you see here tonight, so I'd also need to talk about that. But, so student housing means, you'll see it there in the middle. Student housing means, is it two?
It's fine.
Student housing means a dwelling unit occupied by 4 or more people who are enrolled as full-time undergraduate students in a post-secondary educational institution. And that's a huge gain over the definition that we used to have, which said rooming boarding house is blah, blah, blah. Off-campus houses occupied by more than 3 unrelated persons shall be deemed rooming houses. And so that was probably in violation of fair housing law to be telling people how they should be related, and it's just very uncool. So we took that out, and we defined it separately as student housing. So now rooming and boarding house is allowed in certain districts, and student housing is allowed in other districts. Notably, you'll see here it says dwelling unit with 4 or more people. It doesn't say a whole house with 4 or more people. So then I want to show you the table of uses really quick.
Is there a definition for dwelling unit?
I'm gonna ignore other segment questions just for 1 second, because I need to show this. Okay.
Just it would hinge on that.
Mm-hmm.
You both live beside properties that are owned by the same individual?
Mm-hmm.
And then this is the table of
The
uses.
days of tar and feathering are done, or?
Maybe.
Sounds like he's the problem.
Andy lives across the street, so there could be
Because
problems.
We made the point before that, for the most part, 98% of the time, things work well because people want to cooperate and work within the law.
Right.
And at the same time, we need a lot of rules to deal with the instances where somebody is trying to work outside.
Yeah.
And so here's this now. These are the residential zoning districts, R20 through R2. And you'll see that student housing is not allowed in the R8, R4, R2 as defined. We just saw the definition of student housing. But in the R20 and R12, it's allowed only as a conditional use with site plan review. Not like a permitted use with site plan review, but a full conditional use review before the DRB with site plan review. And so when the DRB looks at something as a conditional use, it's looking at those things that John kind to you about neighborhood character. And so it can create conditions, you know, around neighborhood
I mean,
character.
you could say as part of your conditional approval, that no more than 4 people, even though you have 4 units, you can say only one of those units can be occupied by students.
Well, I don't think that that would be a legal condition to create, because then you're playing around with what.
Well, we have precedents of critical mass creating issues. I mean, this landlord, by attracting, I was a student athlete, and I know when you get a team in a house, it's a lot different than 4 students who are in different classes and everything. Teams on the same schedule, they do everything together, and they have great morale. So, and these are good teams. So,
But you could create conditions like no partying in the barn in the back, you know, and,
So the barn block limits
and sometimes we're real clever with our conditions, aren't we? Like no outdoor storage of barbecue grills or something that would be an attractive nuisance for partying, you know? But, yeah.
Changing it to up to 4 students per building instead of a dwelling unit? Is that a operational possibility?
Yeah, I was kind of swinging around to that. I wanted to
Okay,
help
thank
them
you.
understand first that there are districts, you know, set for zoning, and that we're already being pretty stern. We tried to be really stern, the planning commission did, because we knew that there have been problems with student housing in the past. So you've got conditional use in the R20 and R12. R12 is still a mixed-use district where you could have some commercial uses. There are those districts that are like at the end of Waybridge Street that are transitioning into these zones. The house that John's having trouble with is actually on Route 7, so it's in a very mixed-use district. It's not in your quaint neighborhood, it's over in a different zoning district.
And again, in that whole mix, that diversity creates a lot of energy. It's a lot of what you're seeking, what makes it interesting there. And it's good, except when you have one that's standing out and not acting responsibly.
yeah, I'm
That's a
just looking
zoning
for
issue?
ways that you keep it under control. I don't think prohibiting use is really where we want to go, but keeping it under control, how do you create the controls or keep it from getting to such critical mass where you got 16 people living in one house?
So let's talk about the
We
definition.
each have 16 friends, and there you go.
I'm sorry if I'm being bossy with you, I'm used to the planning commission.
Go ahead.
Okay, just
I
give
guess.
me a stern look or something if I need to shut up. And the DRB, I boss them around too, don't I? So, what about the definition? Should we think about the definition? Heather asked about that. Like, should it be 4 or more students per building instead of per dwelling unit?
4 or less.
Yeah.
That's what John was
Sorry, 4 or less.
suggesting.
Yeah.
The
No.
reason we,
I think
4
The reason
or
we
more
say
as
clear-
student housing.
2 things. One, a lower number limit to trigger some action of control. And also a percentage of 50% or less of the population in that building, so that you have a diversity in the building.
I kind of like the idea if we can just limit the building. If the building's got 4 units and you limit to 4 in the building, then the other 12 are naturally going to be diverse. You don't have to specify.
That's the way to do it.
so a dwelling unit is defined as, it's a long definition, but the important part is that there's a kitchen. So every time you get a kitchen, you get 4 students. So if the landlord's gonna go through the trouble of creating separate units that have their own kitchens, then that's what the zoning currently says, that they can have 4 students before it triggers an approval as student housing. I think that's because we thought that, that when students are sharing a kitchen and sharing like a dining space and stuff like that, that's when it starts to become a little more ungainly. It also felt weird to us, you know, if you had a person with a duplex, you could have students on one side and students on the other side. Those students might not even know each other. They have completely different kitchen facilities. Is it fair to count those students together? And what if those units were kind of minimized and you had separate landlords?
It's a little different though, because Middlebury College is, I mean, I went to a school the same size as Middlebury College. You know everybody on the school, so I think that the odds are when you get students, you have a duplex, 4 and 4, they're gonna, if they don't know each other, they're gonna get to know each other, and by the end of the year, when spring comes around and they're ready to get out and let loose a little bit, and you're gonna have problems that John said.
Just a quick comment.
It ought to be public, though.
Of course. John Barstow. I just wanted to point out one of the concerns that John Tenney raised, which I think is really important and it makes it incumbent upon the college to take more responsibility for this, is that having more rental properties go to students does freeze out other people because they get higher rents. And housing is a huge problem, rental is a huge problem. So if we can if we can control it more, it is going to help the rental housing sector, because I've seen it happen where what they charge per bedroom, they charge per bedroom when they do rentals for students, in one case I know of on Wayward Street. So I just think that's another important consideration in trying to limit this, and also influence the college, but that's different.
I think that the immediate housing crunch that the college has is because of the strange demographics of COVID. They had a whole bunch of people defer for the 2021 year. Then they accepted people for this past year, not knowing how many they would get, not knowing how many people would come in the last group. They opened up the Bread Loaf campus. They purchased a hotel. They still had more students than they could accommodate. They can't fix that in 1 year. They have too many students for the classes they can offer. They have too many students right now for the facilities.
Andy, this is a historical problem because they cannot make every senior stay on campus.
That's true.
They have an option.
The bulge right now.
So, I know that, but it's still be rented.
Yes.
For the notes, maybe we should start labeling you John 1, John 2, John 3.
It's our generation.
Different last initials.
John?
I understand your point, and it's correct to a point. The college declined to start a new dormitory facility because it didn't like the cost. Well, everybody's having trouble with housing costs, and the college is in the position to have the most resources to deal with that. So I don't buy it.
That's what was going through my mind is they had approval, support to build a new dormitory that increases the capacity, and if they're not going to get started on that, there'll be a continuation. We got the 4 years of the bubble, but once it gets started, I think it's going to stay. I think if we change that instead of to unit to house, is that a minor or major change?
That's a minor change.
And that, I think, accomplishes what we're looking to accomplish.
And if you don't like it, you can always change it back next year, but
Yeah.
we're dealing with a greedy landlord right now.
We have one particular, yeah.
Should it say house or should it say like building?
Oh, building.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, I'm not the
Okay.
zoning person.
Or
I just have to
structure
remember
or
3
something.
Johns, so. Okay.
Need more restrooms.
Were there other comments for this evening on this?
Just
Laura?
related. So I know Jen mentioned that zoning can't solve everything, and I know that you've just talked about how you can address this, and it does impact rental downtown, but what about our noise ordinance? Is it not working? Do we need to update our noise ordinance? Do we need to do a better job of enforcing our noise ordinance? I know that that was intended to address this concern.
Or do you know what time the quiet hours begin on weekends?
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
Right.
Maybe we need to look at that.
I totally agree. Ours are much different than Burlington's, and I
So
think
I
that
think we
that's
need
where
to
I'd prefer to
revise and
look,
update our noise
rather than
ordinance.
limiting property use.
Let's update our noise ordinance.
I agree with you, Laura.
Thank you.
Jason Murray. On the noise ordinance thing, doesn't that go back to If you don't have enough police officers to enforce speed around town,
It's
are you gonna have enough officers?
it's just the same, yes.
Let me know noise complaints.
And decibels are a difficult thing to measure
If
sometimes.
I can respond on that.
John?
The property that I've been dealing with, 53 North Pleasant Street, has been deemed a public nuisance by the police chief. And so next opportunity that they have to have a problem party is going to result in a fine or other suspensions of use and things like that. So that would be the way that we would have opportunity to enforce them.
Just out of curiosity, are there any other problem dwellings around town other than your particular landlord's properties?
No, I think, as I said, you created a good document overall, and it addresses some very important issues for the town in a very progressive way. So I love it.
I get what you're driving at though, and like being on the zoning complaint receiving end of things, it seems to be this landlord.
Yeah, Andy Jackson received some complaints from his student housing on Washington Street, and he responded by changing his contract with the students to say that there were police visitations that would be fine.
And does he have more than 4 students in his dwelling? So are we gonna impact some of these dwellings by changing this?
He limits the student athletes, or students chosen to be residents.
Yeah, but if we change this, he can't
So,
continue operating the way he is?
no. Please.
Come on forward, Howard.
Since we live right next door to the Andy Jackson's house. So he has, I think it's usually 7 or 8 students in there at a time. He has 2 separate apartments. And as John mentioned, John number 1. Oh, sorry.
Number 2.
Yeah, he does try to put, you know, restrictions in his lease to try to control. You know, so often students will lose deposits from police being called. So we only had, out of 12 years living next door to the house, we only had one really bad year when it was the men's lacrosse team. So as you had mentioned, having a whole team in there is problematic. But, you know, generally they're respectful. We get their numbers, we text them. If it's getting too loud, they turn the music down. So, and I think he might be impacted by that. He has 2 separate units, so yeah, you know, but the main unit has, I think it has at least 5 or 6 suites. So, I don't know how you balance the two.
The current trigger into the existing zoning, like the old zoning, is for a whole building. So theoretically, Andy Jackson would have already gotten permission for that student housing because it's by building.
Okay.
The new zoning was changing it to dwelling, which seemed more convenient for us from an administrative point of view, but it's a small sacrifice to make if that moves things along and give it a whirl. And
So you just keep it with what it is, and then they have to come to you?
yeah. Well, no,
The
we'll
tr-
keep it like it is. We'll use the new definition, but we'll change it from dwelling unit to building.
To building.
But I don't, but if you were wondering if changing that was gonna mess up anybody who's grandfathered in already, it shouldn't. It shouldn't require people who are already using their buildings that way to come in for some sort of reapproval.
No. Okay.
So there's going to be grandfather?
Well, I mean, that's just, I mean, I hate that term anyway, but that's just how zoning works. It runs with the land. So if they already have an approval, then they have an approval.
I don't think our landlord has approval either one.
Why are you asking? You think?
Then it goes back to 16 students.
Not, does he already have an approval? This is our question from before. Does he already have an approval then that approval's already on the record, what more could you want? If he doesn't have an approval on the record already for student housing, then it would trigger a DRB hearing, which is John number two's point, like, hey, I wanna go in front of the DRB and see if we can create some good conditions.
So we should call the zoning.
Oh, you should definitely come see us. We should go through that file, and I'm sure Dave Wetmore already has. And we should pull any approval that's already there. You could check those conditions to see if there's, anything against ping pong tables or something that would help you. Like, if not, then maybe he has to come in. Oh, I know about this one. That's the Sunshine Daycare. Dave already met with that landlord several times, and he told me that landlord was voluntarily deciding to come before the DRB for an approval, even though the current definition doesn't require him to. He was
And that hasn't
going
happened
to.
yet?
But it hasn't happened. Like, he gave us the application, but not the fee.
We'll both get
So-
legal notices.
So this would codify that.
So are you comfortable with this minor change?
I think so, yeah, sure. And again, if it's really difficult.
It just drives them to the DRB then?
Come again?
It just drives them to the DRB.
No, it just sets the trigger, it's just a lower trigger for, yes.
When they would have to come and get it.
Yep.
Wait, it's prohibited in R8.
A student housing, as defined, is prohibited in R8.
So why would they go to the DRB?
Oh, and the R12 or R20.
Oh, right, yeah, they wouldn't go to the DRB at all.
Okay.
It would be prohibited, yeah, thank you.
But
Okay,
it does not
we-
do
we
that.
got one.
Well, the conditional use areas, they would have to.
Right.
So, yeah, I guess you're closing the door on this landlord, in that location, being able to have students in his building at all, no matter how many units he creates.
Well, and that was what the zoning, that's what the planning commission had proposed, because we didn't change that this evening.
What's
Right?
that?
No, this wouldn't be student housing unless it was 16 students or more
Oh,
in a 4-unit building
Yeah.
until we change the definition.
so we changed the definition.
I feel really uncomfortable with a landlord who's not here changing the use that they've had this property in for most of a year. I understand that absentee landlords are a huge problem in a lot of ways, but I feel really bad about this process.
You can rent it to families.
So,
I don't feel too
Just-
bad about this particular landlord based upon the way he's dealt with the town. And he's obviously thumbed his nose at his neighbors.
so the current building would fall under the current zoning, correct?
Like right now, as of today?
Yeah.
Yeah, right now, as of today, right.
And so the current zoning says it would be the rooming house definition, right?
That's correct.
So currently, we're reviewing applications under both sets of bylaws,
Okay.
but we don't have a set of bylaws yet unless you approve it that defines student housing as 4 or more students in the building as a whole.
Right. But it said that prior to. The current zoning says something to that effect.
Said more than 3 in a rooming.
So technically, right now, the building is out of compliance on the current zoning.
Right?
Okay. So even if we change it, we are not really making any more difficult because right now is out of compliance. Okay.
Wait, can you back up?
Yeah, he has not.
He is not approved for his current use in that building under the current regulations.
Because it requires a boarding house, which our current regulations probably
Would, it's a conditional use.
right.
Let me check and make sure, like, in terms of like what's allowed in the districts though, that we're,
Oh, okay.
right, we're definitely right in terms of the definition.
I guess I'm just, like, if we change that one word, and it really doesn't make a difference in terms of what he's doing now and what he could, then I'm agreeable to making that change. So,
I think Jen's right that the boarding house language was discriminatory and illegal as it existed before this revision. I think that hanging our hats on that as, well, he didn't apply for this archaic designation is not satisfactory to me.
Yeah, but I don't think what we're suggesting that we change it to
No, but you're
is-
saying he didn't have this designation that would have worked, and so we're not changing it from
Well, it
a
sounds to-
working situation to a,
Sounds to me like others, while it may have been archaic and discriminatory, others were abiding by it, and
It was
we.
the best we had.
The best, so we're trying to fix it so it's not.
no, I agree, it's an improvement in that dimension.
So rewording it in a more up-to-date kind of way is sort of separate from the issue of whether or not it would have been requiring DRE hearing or approval for it.
Agreed.
It's kind of hard to create zoning for bad neighbors.
Really hard.
It is.
Yeah.
If it's just the one house, or the two houses.
Right.
Are you looking at it?
So,
Oh, I was just looking at a zoning map, because I think you're in the village residential district, but I don't know all my zoning.
So the one on Route 7, is that required under the current zoning to have a conditional use permit?
Yeah, under the current, you keep throwing me off the current zoning, like, the old zoning, right?
The old zoning.
Antiquated zoning.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is that? That's the ERC. So, yeah, that as a rooming house would
Yeah.
require a conditional use.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that they're under the ERC as well, but that's what I'm just trying to confirm right now. To answer Heather's question of, are we doing no more harm than we are before? I still want to be wrong.
While you're looking that up, we have another comment or question.
Less of a question. Ellen Cronin, South Street. So what it sounds like is we are creating a new definition that had previously been under rooming house and is now under student housing, right? So as part of the process, was there a plan to let anyone know who was presently approved as rooming house that there is a change going to happen and now they may be under student housing? Was that part of the plan?
Anybody who's already approved should carry that approval forward, right, Jen? Yeah. An existing approval.
So-
The issue for people who are already have a conditional use, it doesn't change.
Okay, so then it shouldn't make a difference.
This particular landlord set up shop without,
During COVID, he came in and bought a couple of houses and redid them and then rented them out to students, but has never been in, from John and John's understanding, has not been in for
So
conditional use approval.
it sounds like this should not be a concern.
Yeah.
Again, though, boarding houses are permitted use, not conditional use, under the existing.
no, they are conditional use.
Okay, I'm looking at the new one, and it shows permitted use wherever boarding houses are. I don't have the old
Yeah.
map.
The old one makes rooming house with 4 or more students would be.
That
in the
wasn't
rooming house
existing.
definition, and that requires a conditional use approval.
So on that note, perfect segue, I looked up the zoning district for Sunshine Daycare's building, and it's high density residential. Rooming houses are conditional use in that district. And under the antiquated, the old zoning, zoning number 1, it would have been defined as a rooming house because it would have been for the whole building. So if he came in under original zoning, we would call it a rooming and boarding house, with this sort of like student housing provision and required trip before the DRE. Now under the iteration that you're looking at tonight, right, it defines it per dwelling unit. So now he's able to get in sort of under the radar by having multiple dwelling units that may put him well over 4 for the whole building, but not for any individual dwelling. So now you guys are looking to put it back to the whole building. So we'll look at the whole building again. Seems easy to me.
So it basically keeps it the same as it was.
Yeah.
And they can come in and get a conditional use if they have all the controls in place and the DRB approves it.
and should not be any more punitive to this particular property owner than it was under the old zoning before we started making revisions.
Okay. Thank you, Jen.
So you're comfortable with it?
Yeah. The more I talk about it, the more I like it better. Yeah. And if it blows up in our faces and it's terrible, we'll tell you next time, next spring when we do the bylaws again, no biggie.
Kathleen, you've been following this, you've got a lot of years, and I'm gonna, are you comfortable with that?
Jen is our subject expert.
Oh, there's a good boss. Wow, wow.
I'll do anything. I'll do windows, but I don't do zoning.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's not true. It would be more punitive, wouldn't it, Andy? Because now he's prohibited instead of a
Indeed.
trip for, instead of a trip for the DRB. Now he has no way out. Now there's no way to get students in the building at the quantity that he desires.
But
I'm
it
still
doesn't,
comfortable with it.
but it still allows him to rent out the other units, right?
Yeah.
Just not to students.
He could to students until he got to 4 students in the building. So he could do two bedrooms or whatever.
That's in the high-density residential?
Yep, current high density residential, yep.
You couldn't do a conditional use all the way up to 16, but you'd have to go through the,
Right, because the high density, that section of high density residential is now R8. So thinking back to that chart that we saw, R8.
R12,
There was
okay.
an X under student housing in
Yeah.
R8, which is different than John's situation where it's a conditional use. It's easy to confuse those two, I know I am.
Which John?
John, that's
Number
you.
2.
If I could make one last closing statement here, that, again, I'd remind the group that the controlling purpose in the document is the preservation and protection of the neighborhoods. It is not protection of the landlords, and it is not to provide student housing for the college. So let's remember what the guiding principles are and where we should be focusing.
John, number 2, that is under the DRB guidance. That is not the overall purpose of zoning.
It's written right in the document.
I found the quote you were reading.
It's a review of standards.
Yes.
So just that particular property with the new regulations, so that I'm 100% clear, could still rent 1 or more units till we got to the point he had 4 students. He could still continue to rent the rest of the units, they just couldn't be to students. So there's no technical impact to his financial situation there.
Except he probably has them paying per student, per bed.
Right.
So
But-
you
but
just
that's-
just
But
reduce his
but
income.
we're assuming something that we don't have facts for, so let's.
Well, that's the way it's done.
Okay,
That's the way it's done.
so I still think I'm good with it. I still think that I'm good with setting it, and we're gonna review this in a year, and if something really big comes up, you're gonna let us know, and we're gonna look at it, or the planning commission's gonna look at it and make a recommendation.
Rod?
Yes, I agree with Heather's point about this whole changes. I will go with the minor modifications that we discussed, and we'll see within a year how it works.
Dan?
I'm just as confused as when I started, but I just find it difficult to, like I just said up here a few minutes ago, to create zoning to get rid of bad neighbors. I mean, that's what we're trying to do.
So the question is the zoning so did the bad neighbors, here's what's going in my head.
Mhm.
Did the bad neighbors point out a flaw in our zoning that because of a demand that was a bubble? that all of a sudden they're driving students out, because years ago, we had this issue, I mean, I'm a longtime resident of Middlebury, we had this issue when the college bought up tons of houses to bring students closer to the campus and get them out of those communities. And now we're cycling back because the college had built enough housing that they started getting rid of some of those houses and selling them to professors and other people related to the college and whatnot. And now they don't have enough housing for their students, and now you're driving them out, and you got some enterprising person that's got the means from out of state come in and buy them up, and lo and behold, he's got a ready-made thing, because I can provide you a beautiful house for this sports team. That's like asking for trouble.
Right.
But my question I have is, I heard so much that they are non-compliant right now. So why can't we make them compliant? Why don't we go there first instead of,
But with the new zoning, there's no option for that, because they could, under the existing, there'd be a conditional use for a boarding house in these zones, but there will not be for student housing, at least in the R8, with the new zone.
Free it up for families.
Right.
I understand.
That's really important. That's how I'm gonna sleep better tonight, knowing that like we did the right thing for affordable housing.
Well, maybe not affordable housing, maybe it's, that's not affordable housing, but it might be workforce housing.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by affordable these days, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John 3, last word. I just wouldn't look at this as trying to zone out a bad neighborhood. We're trying to support quality of life and characters of neighborhoods. That's what you need to do. That's how you do it.
Now what you just said, yeah, you move out the back ones, you move in law-abiding citizens, and you know.
I think these are all great ends. I am just concerned with process. I think that changing the way housing has been used in perhaps an unpermitted but conditional way to one that is not a minor amendment that we should make without the landlord knowing, for instance.
Again,
Yes.
my daughter's been living with me for 3 years with 2 grandkids on my dollar. She can't find housing anywhere.
I guess the one thing I would say is, we're not changing it on the landlord. The landlord has pointed out a flaw maybe in their zoning. And
Absentee landlords are a huge problem. I totally get that. When you are not responsive to the people that you create trouble for because you live 3 hours away, that's a problem. I definitely see all that.
I think-
Mechanism of action, you remove the fence on my property without contacting me, so it's say tit for tat, but you also removed up to 8 feet of deep into my property of my azaleas that I planted, my lilacs, my forsythias, again, without contacting me ahead of time.
So changing this from dwelling to building does not seem to me to be a major change. I think the major change happened in changing the zoning to the new R and making some of those areas that this type of definition does no longer fit. That was the bigger change, and that isn't even part of what we're talking about tonight. And that part of the process has gone through the whole thing, through all 30 planning commission meetings and everything. So I'm gonna disagree with you a little bit, Andy, in that I think that the process and the biggest part of the change in these definitions in the zoning has gone through the full process.
Sure. I agree with that, except that in the instance in front of us, we are changing the allowed use of these properties by changing it from dwelling unit to building.
I think you're right, Brian, that this probably brought to our attention the fact that we thought the definition worked really good. And it works good when you're thinking about duplexes or smaller, number of units, but it's a little wonky when there's that many units in a building. It changes.
It also works well when you've got a good landlord, like the one on Washington Street.
I don't look at things politically like that. It doesn't have anything to do with a landlord. It has to do with like literally how does it feel to have this many student bodies in this size building versus that size building. I think it's okay to use an example like that and thinking of how something feel or is it right, as long as you're keeping the personalities out of it.
But as we were saying about the Jackson property, right, that were it not grandfathered, the 9 students in 2 units on Washington Street, were it not grandfathered, that would be unacceptable in that R8 zone now with 5 and 4 students in the 2 units. Right. We are picking on the particular properties and the particular landlord, whether that's how you look at it or not.
We're not picking on a property or a landlord.
You need to step forward. Esther can't hear you, and it's not being picked up by the TV.
I'm sorry. The rules have been applied to everyone, and there are those who participate in the rulemaking, and there are those who follow the rules. And those who choose not to follow the rules and have not been grandfathered are then those who are not part of the process. And it's not a picking on, it's not a pointing out. It has raised an issue that maybe the zoning did not work as perfectly as we thought it would work in the past zoning. But the reason there's a problem with this particular instance is because they were non-participatory from the start. And it's not a problem with the other instance because they were participatory, because they came before the DRB and they are grandfathered.
When I reached out to Richard Sibley 2 months ago and suggested that he come to one of our meetings, he said, well, I'm already expecting to go in front of the DRB sometime this summer. Does it make sense to do both? And I said, I don't know. I think it would be great if you did attend. But I recognize that he has certainly behaved very poorly in a lot of instances. But I don't know that he's entirely non-participatory. I just know that he's not local.
Does he have a date?
No, he chose, Dave Whitmore told me that.
Please step forward if you're going to talk.
Dave Whitmore told me that he has chosen not to file the paperwork, and he hasn't filed any fees. He's not even responding to David right now.
I think we should take the issue of this particular property out and think about it in terms of the whole situation. And I still think I'm comfortable with changing that one word and having you let us know if, I mean, we don't have to wait a year to make a change if something really were to blow up, correct?
Right.
What's our time frame if we find that we've erred on something to be able to make a change? Is it a 2-month window? We have to post it and do a...
Yeah, I guess this one took us May through August. Yeah, at least 4 or 5 months.
But this was a pretty major,
It's still the same number of people. Oh, right, and we did have that extra hearing, so maybe we could tighten that up a little bit.
if we found there was
'Cause we've-
one
we've-
thing that we
Yeah.
want to change, whether
we've-
it's food carts or number of people in a dwelling, anything like that, what's our fastest turnaround on changing, amending something?
Typically, a select board would say, we're gonna do that the next time the planning commission has a batch of bylaw edits that they're ready to put through the process.
Yeah.
But if you really wanna know, like, probably 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
But I think that we're gonna have a batch of some things that need to be done.
Well, we have one that we're already, that you already are potentially discussing.
So the planning commission does this all the time. We have to think of examples of where things are working or not working, or things that have blown up or not blown up, in order to understand like how the regulations really work on the ground. So I think that's really the main thrust of this conversation.
Esther, I'm just wondering, we've heard from most everyone here.
Yeah. Esther, any thoughts?
Thank you. This has been interesting as I listen and hear folks and their experience and wanting to change a word or two. I'll have to agree with Heather on this one. And I'm comfortable with where we are. Yeah, those are my words. Thank you.
So, I think I'm prepared to close the hearing if nobody else has anything else.
Yep.
With that, no other necessary comments from the audience? If there's no further comments regarding the zoning bylaw amendment, I'm going to call the public hearing closed at 8:40. And we'll move on to 7A on tonight's agenda, which is to consider adoption of the bylaw amendment. So with that, what's the pleasure of the board?
I'll move to adopt the 2022 bylaw amendment with minor modifications as discussed during the hearing to the Middlebury zoning and subdivision regulations.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I'd like to hear comments or questions on this motion. I know you have a comment.
I like almost everything in here. I feel that bringing up a new change in the second public hearing, which clearly affects the existing use of property, and deciding in that hearing that it's a minor change, not requiring another hearing or notification of people affected, not bringing Mr. Sibley and Mr. Jackson in to discuss how student housing has and hasn't worked in this town is a mistake.
Duly noted. Other comments? Questions? Okay, all for the vote. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
Nay.
Motion is carried 5-1. And Jen, I do want to thank you. It's not easy. I think we all are struggling with a few of the things, and I would expect next year we'll be entertaining a few small tweaks as you keep perfecting some of these uses and trying to help drive us towards what the vision was in our master plan. So thank you very much. Please thank the Planning Commission for all their hard work too.
Yes.
And I thank you all for your consideration.
Next, I'm going to move on to appointment of the position of elected treasurer. At our July 26th Select Board meeting, the board nominated Beth Dow, assistant to the town manager, to complete Jackie Sullivan's term as town treasurer. I will note no additional letters of interest for the position have been received. What's the pleasure of the board?
I move to appoint Beth Dow to complete Jackie Sullivan's term as town treasurer, expiring in March 2023.
Second.
And by the way, it's already announced in the newspaper, so I think we have to vote for it, so.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
I think John left,
Okay. So
Most of
next,
John's
Howard.
Also, if you wouldn't mind Steve Myers on, I don't know if it's possible to bring him in since he's not able to be here in person. And we have a couple of members here, and there might be also a comment from Jonathan Miller if he raises his hand.
Mike Roy is also here.
Let's get right to it, Howard.
Okay, well, I'll see if I can make it a little quicker than the last discussion.
Good luck.
At least my name's not John, right? Well, we do have a John back there somewhere. I don't know how much background's needed here. It really started with the Energy Committee forming a subcommittee to look into the Summit housing and advocating for a low carbon, no carbon solution or development, since that aligns with the mission that the Energy Committee has. I think there are 2 points to this discussion. One is our role, the Energy Committee's role, in advocating for, well, new construction in this case, with the Summit housing. I think it's broader than that, because it might not be the last development we have. The other issue is, what's the town doing to try to enact stricter codes for fighting climate change? In the past, we acknowledge the fact that the Select Board's been very supportive of what we do, based on discussions we've had, the number of times we've come, and which we appreciate. I do think that maybe there's some differences as far as a sense of the urgency that we're facing with climate change, and maybe what could be done beyond what we're doing. That might be a separate discussion from what we're really here for tonight.
That's a bigger discussion.
It is a bigger
Yeah,
discussion.
let's kind of focus.
We can
on-
table that one.
Yeah.
But the real issue here is really advocating for being able to engage in the DRB, the Planning Commission, and Summit Housing to be able to discuss, work with them on steps that could be taken to work for a greener development. We're not looking for, although it would be nice, to have sign-off authority on the development or the plans or whatever. That we realize would go beyond what we're intended, what we're there for. Trying to think, just a couple things to point out. If you look at the master plan under the sustainability and resiliency section, it talks about increased green building techniques in old and new buildings downtown, adopt innovative, these are the goals, adopt innovative methods to become a world-class model for sustainability and a destination for the demonstration of sustainable practices and green infrastructure. If the Energy Committee is not there to advocate for that, who is, right? Who's going to speak up to try and reach those goals? And the recommendation is require new buildings to utilize best practices for green construction, and there's more to that. So I really think this is why the Energy Committee exists, right? To be able to engage in these discussions. And we can take up the other issue as far as what more the town can be doing at a later date, but, and I don't know, I know, Jen, you had some feedback on the requests that we had made. And maybe before doing that, I don't know, Steve, if you wanted to add something to that.
Yeah, thanks, Howard, and thanks to everyone there. I would just add, just to pull back up for a second and just sort of orient the context here. This, the Summit Housing Development Project is not just another project in the town. It's historic, it's incredibly important. The size and scope of it is something that we haven't seen in town in a very long time, if ever. And that comes forward at a time in our history when the climate crisis is becoming more and more obvious. We have scientists this spring telling us we have to do all these things even faster than was already very difficult to understand how we were going to do. We have runways and all kinds of other infrastructure in Europe melting about a month ago. And then on the good side, sort of at the other end, the hopeful side of things, we have finally, a huge bill pending now this week in Congress that looks like it's going to pass to support the kinds of clean energy infrastructure that we have started to bring forward in our early conversations on this project. Heat pumps, electric vehicle charging stations, electrify as much as possible as part of this project. And so I think that's the context in which members of the Energy Committee and others in town are seeing this project. And we really, and in the initial meeting that Summit held, I've also been involved in further conversation with them. They're very supportive of a lot of it, but we are, I think we have a responsibility as a community to do as much as we can, while at the same time recognizing the other goals of this affordable housing project. And so we would like to work with the developers and with the town to lend the expertise that we've been developing around these issues. We have met other folks in the community who are not formal members of the Energy Committee. Jonathan Miller is here tonight, who's an expert in this field. We would like to be working productively with all principals to have this be as great a project that for the developers, for the community, for the folks that need housing, for the college, for all. There's wins to be made on this project really across the board.
I just wanted to add a couple of key facts. One is that being green, sustainable in your construction has nothing to do, it's not correlating with cost of construction. That there was a study done by Davis Langdon, an international cost estimating firm, back in 2004 that measured all the LEED buildings, LEED certified buildings against normal construction to code, and there was no cost correlation difference. That in many of the cases, the green and sustainable buildings were much less expensive. And really, it comes down to making the decisions early on being sustainable, to having input early, and to working as a team. So if we can bring the ideas to Summit and have a good discussion early enough, we can have very good development that meets their costs.
Board, thoughts, questions?
I'll go.
Okay.
I just feel a little uncomfortable with this. If it was a town project and the town was, we were built, then I would fully support it, but I just struggling a little bit with it being a private property, private development, and us asking our Energy Committee to, can we think about like putting something together in a letter that, says, hey, we would like you to consider these things and keep it more, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I'm just telling you I'm struggling with it a little bit.
Well, I could say, interestingly enough, there's a lot of overlap with SEAC and the Energy Committee, right? I mean, we have, four board members of SEAC are also part of our committee.
SEAC?
I'm sorry, the Climate Economy Action Center, which Steve.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so there's been a group of people engaging with Summit, outside of the Energy Committee, right, as a SEAC group. And I think Steve alluded to the fact that they've been receptive. It's not like they're saying, oh no, not another, someone else telling what we need to do. I think it sounded like they welcome ideas that are coming from people like Jonathan and from Steve. Yeah, I don't know. I guess this gets down to what is really the role of the Energy Committee and how far does it go? Is it really just municipal? I think there's a lot of communication. We try to inform the citizenry, the residents, as far as what is available to them in terms of financing and, CVOEO. There are lots of organizations that are doing great things to help the residents. Maybe this is one step beyond that, but I also think, should we work within the same paradigm that we've been working with, given the situation we're in?
Yeah.
So have you been in conversation with the Summit Properties about this? And how's the response to your concerns? And what would you like us to do as a select board on this?
I think we're just looking to get the support from the select board of us engaging in discussion. It's not like we're saying it has to be this way or that way. It's offering ideas. It's trying to understand, it's collaborating on solutions. From the sounds of it, it sounds like Summit's still trying to figure out their approach. All indications are that it's a good organization. They're trying to do the right thing and trying to be as green as possible. So it's not like there's resistance in that regard. But I think the more people involved in terms of providing ideas, the better. And if there's a certain expertise that we can provide, why not?
You say there's a lot of overlap between the Energy Committee and CSAC, not CSAC, SEAC, thanks. What's the additional benefit of them being engaged with the Energy Committee as well as SEAC?
Maybe just from the perspective that we are, I guess, considered a town body, right? And that is more representative of the town, and the fact that the town would be advocating for green solutions and strictly advocacy.
Yeah.
And by having the support of the select board in doing that, I think carries a little bit more weight. And SEAC is Addison County, whereas the Energy Committee is Middlebury.
Yeah. Would you be opposed to meeting in coordination with SEAC, so they're
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, considering that
perhaps
it's the same people.
Yeah, four of the same, right.
But yeah.
I guess I'm uncomfortable. I agree with everything you guys do and everything you're saying, but I'm uncomfortable we have a DRB, which has regulatory authority over development of any properties and businesses. You don't.
Right.
And I don't know how I don't know what that says to send out a committee to work with a developer of a very large project. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I was developing a business or going to build a business here in town or want to start a business in town. I'm not sure how I would feel as the person who's trying to do this if all of a sudden you guys came out and this committee who has no authority is going to try to convince me to do what I should do. I agree with you that they need to maybe they need help. Maybe they're smarter than all of you guys put together. Maybe they have the people on their staff. I would hope a builder at this time would not need that help. But I don't see where you fit in with the DRB. And my suggestion would be that you work with the DRB and see what the DRB, advising the DRB.
And that, we are asked.
I can see the heads shaking yes and no.
Okay,
guys, this is a conversation.
With the DRB, yeah.
Huh?
There are, what was it, the Act 89 that was signed, set a set of standards, residential building energy standards that all builders are required to achieve. A lot of towns are adopting what they call stretch codes. So they're going beyond the basic codes that are required for building to tighten up buildings even more. So it's someone needs to advocate for those kinds of things. I don't know to the extent to what I don't know if the DRB is even considering green building into their decisions. You know, who is there to push this?
I don't know, I just know they have the responsibility and authority to approve these things. We just don't have a plan or a policy or anything to act on to say yes to this.
Did we just change, like in the zoning, so that to the maximum extent feasible, that the orientation of the building needs to be to support solar?
Yeah, that's in there. Yeah.
Before anybody else on the board, let me just give you my perspective on this. We're structured so that you're a committee of the select board.
Right.
It's in my craw, and I gotta share it with you. The select board approved one of our, I mean, this is a right-of-way access for one building in our town. And your board, your committee, has called the select board to question by soliciting signatures and putting in, and well, Ross, it's on your
It's in your minutes. It's in your minutes of your meetings.
And so that is what I would fear turning you loose on a developer. That is not appropriate standard of how committees function underneath a standing board. And we have supported you guys a lot because it's the right thing to do, and because we need it. I would rather have you putting your energy into making recommendations for if like this whole thing about orientation of our buildings. But for Middlebury to step way outside what are the normal parameters, we're going to make Middlebury an unfriendly place for developers. And we need this development. I personally, after what just went on with, we asked the developer to develop the Mill Street. We got a great, I mean, it was put up for bid, and the college supported this developer. They need an updated system, and now we have a petition, and they've got to wait until it gets voted on in the town. I am not happy about that, because that's not fair to them. And I happen to have been privy to the conversations, and I just say, if that's the way we deal with another developer, that's not for the town. You cannot deal with people and represent yourself as a committee of the town. You can't deal with people that way, because we're a much friendlier, much more hospitable, much better town than that. Just because somebody doesn't agree with you doesn't mean they're wrong all the time. And so I'm not going to support it, whether the rest of the board does or not, but I am dead set that I'm not going to support it because of that, because we have a precedent of you guys going outside the bounds of the guidance of the board.
Let me speak to that. The Mill Street it came up in discussion. It was raised by Ross in our meeting, and we discussed it. I mean, we're supportive, but that was not the committee.
Doesn't matter. It comes as a committee. He's a member of your committee.
He's
I
also
really respect Ross. He's done a lot of good in this town. Okay? That I do not think is doing good, because you've just held up a very critical infrastructure work for one particular property that is a lot better than it was 5 years ago. So, you know, we're not going to solve everything on every property, but we can make incremental progress. And so I'm very supportive of the letter that Jen drafted for us, in that if you want to talk to them as individuals and whatnot, that's good. But I am not supportive of empowering you as a town committee to go and negotiate with a developer.
And the only thing I would do is ask again, how do we achieve goal number 4, where it talks about Middlebury becoming a world-class model for sustainability and a destination for the demonstration of sustainable practices in green infrastructure? How do we get there?
I'd love to have that discussion, but not tonight.
Okay.
But I really think we should engage in that, and I'm interested in it. I mean, I'm looking for 3 solar projects right now. I'm passionate about it too, but I also am very passionate about the form. And so Ross?
Mike's had his hand up for a long time.
There you go.
Yeah, Ross Conrad.
I've got Ross
Jump in, Mike.
Hold off.
Oh, okay, Ross Conrad. Unfortunately, the battery on my iPad died. I was going to read to you a guidance document that was produced for helping towns deal with stretch codes. And it clearly says that one of the things that a town can do is provide technical assistance to developers, to builders, to help them look at all the options and consider. I think that's all that Howard's asking for here. We're not looking to, do anything but work with them, provide like he said, we've developed some expertise and we have various people with different experiences, and to provide that technical experience and guidance to help maybe make the project better than it might be otherwise.
So here's a thought, as opposed to empowering you to just go approach them, how about laying out the areas that you feel you have technical expertise and you would be willing to engage in, and we can offer that assistance as a town support. I don't have a problem with that. I just don't like making a directive that you are going down to them to guide them, because it's their project. It's not our project.
I think that was kind of along the lines of what I was thinking in some kind of letter that said, we have an active energy committee. They have these skills and would be willing to share this information with you if you requested it. Does that sound kind of like?
I can support a letter like that.
Well, I think that's up to Howard and the whole committee, not up to me. And just to clarify, that the whole thing with the Mill Street property and the petition was me. It wasn't the committee. After I had done it, I let the committee know about it and it was discussed, but they really didn't have anything to do with it. I think a couple of people might have signed a petition, but other than that, they didn't. It wasn't a committee thing.
Okay, I'll arm wrestle you over it later, so.
And the only other thing I would say is, I think the word you're using to guide them, I think is not what we're after. It's open discussion. It's collaborating. It's have you considered this? What do you? It's not. We're not there as an authority, as an authority on what they should be doing.
I prefer offer assistance.
Yeah,
it's a different, guiding has the impression that you're the superior and you're mentoring, whereas offering assistance, you're a partnership, and you will accept if they don't take your path.
Yeah,
So,
I'm saying guidance, I would not use that word. Guidance is what, I think it's more working with them, but.
Well, how about drafting a letter for us of an introduction of our energy committee with the areas that you feel you could be of support if they choose to ask for it.
We can do that.
Can I? I had my hand up.
It's not a stand up for about.
Do I get a chance to speak?
Yes.
So I apologize for not being here in person, but I'm a mile and a half away. I wish I was there. It feels to me, reading Jen's memo, it struck me as quite.
We're not talking about Jen's memo, Mike.
No, but the memo that Jen
from
wrote
that.
suggested that the Energy Committee's purview is to basically help the town of Middlebury's government
conserve energy, but beyond that, we had no voice. And I think that it's a really important moment for us to think about what is the role of the Energy Committee of the town of Middlebury in thinking about what Middlebury's role is going to be in combating climate change. And that if we want to consign ourselves to just thinking about how do we save, how do we do the right thing within the government and the buildings that the government runs, that's not that interesting. But it strikes me that there's a really important conversation about the role in the overall management of the town. And so how does the Energy Committee help support the work that happens around planning, zoning, all of those important questions? And I think that it's a great moment for us to really have that conversation. Maybe tonight's not the night to have that conversation, but I think if we're really committed to combating climate change, the town really needs to look at itself and ask, like, what are we doing and what is the role of this committee that it formed in helping to support changes that have to happen at all levels within our community.
And we talked about that earlier. Maybe you weren't on, but we'll put that on at some point here. And Howard had mentioned it, and I agree. I mean, it may be time to morph the mission and add to it. You've done a lot of good, and at some point you kind of solved a lot of what we can solve on the government side, and now it comes down to how else you can support the community. But we're well past the agenda time, and we're not taking that up tonight.
When can we take that up?
Mike, I'll be back with you.
That'd be great. I'd love it. Look forward to it.
Gary?
I'm a member of the DRB, and I think the Energy Committee should work through the DRB and not replace us, which I think this is the thrust of this from the Energy Committee standpoint. It appears. So
I would just say it's never our intent to work.
Don't interrupt me.
Through the.
You'll get your chance. I just think that they should be doing it through the DRB. We're not a bunch of dummies on the DRB. We've got some engineers, we've got some architects, we've got people who understand green. It's not, we haven't been living in a vacuum. So we'd welcome their assistance, but that's it.
Okay.
We don't have a motion, or we're not going to get a motion?
I don't think we're going to do a motion this
Perfect.
evening. We're going to move on.
Can I do what comment?
You got
Sure.
1 minute.
Yep. Yeah, that could be brief. Dan Rafferty, member of Energy Committee. So, reading the committee's bylaws, I think it anticipates some of what you guys are bringing up tonight about a process. This is very process-focused, what we're talking about. I think our role is to generate a recommendation that we arrive at through a majority vote within our committee. And then, as the bylaws read, we present it to a planning commission, or we present it to the select board for your consideration. And there's a mechanism in place for you to override it if need be. So I think all I gathered out of our meetings is not asking for direct interface to steer or veto or suggest animosity towards a development. It was that we want to be able to state a recommendation on a major project that has a huge impact on our community. We rarely get this opportunity to shape and be thoughtful about something that's going to impact for decades now. So,
Yeah, I think, good comment, and so if we can craft the ask a little bit different so that it's in the partnership realm and help and assistance realm, I think we probably can push that.
And so maybe if I can just reiterate what's in the memo, like everybody.
Can you come to the mic just so that people online can hear you?
Watch on TV.
I'm trying to talk to these guys too, though, so maybe I'll lean over the mic.
There we go.
All right.
Brilliant.
So it's just important, like, when you read the memo, to understand, like Mike at home, for instance, what I'm saying is that there are certain committees that are set up under state statute to be advisory committees to the DRB. The Energy Committee is not one of them. If we wanted things in the zoning regarding energy usage, I can't do it here, I'll just talk loud, okay? If I wanted things in the zoning, if we wanted things in the zoning regarding energy usage, they'd be in the zoning. You would have seen them tonight. So the Planning Commission talks about things like requiring green building practices and using the stretch energy code and things like that. And so far, we've kind of dialed it back, and we've only gotten as far as wanting to talk to them about how they orient the buildings. And so, so that's like one way that you could have more influence over the DRB process. But that's not just, I didn't mean to say in my memo that you shouldn't be meeting with them and talking to them. I mean, the developers invited you in, so it's kind of like, what more do you want? This is a perfect scenario. I'm just saying, don't screw up your perfect scenario by wanting the select board to endorse you too, because then you're carrying the political weight of the select board into those meetings, and it changes the whole vibe. Because now if they don't want your help, they can't say no, right? Because now they're gonna be in arrears with the select board, right? So that's all I'm saying. It's not that I don't. And I just wanted to let you know that as far as thinking about process in the future, like we are trying to work with Pale Blue Dot to do a little initial session, like with the Energy Committee will be involved and interview the college, the town, our consultant that we hired for an initial phase 1. We'll talk to all these different people in the town to figure out where we think the low-hanging fruit is, where we think the shortcomings are, so that we can start to work toward having some sort of comprehensive energy plan in the future, which would be a phase 2 we'd have to seek funding for, and think how much that plan would help conversations like this to kind of define people's roles and responsibilities so that we can all kind of work together. I hope that's helpful. Thank you.
It's helpful. Thanks, Jen. Okay, moving on to Personnel Committee recommendations. Heather.
Yes, so the Personnel Committee met with Town Manager Ramsey on last Friday to review 2 proposals, one of which is reestablishing the position of Assistant Town Manager that's been vacant since Chris English stepped down in 2021. I don't think there's anything surprising or any major change in that proposal, just bringing us back to having a full-time assistant town manager. The committee did support Kathleen's recommendation and are bringing it to the board for approval on so that we can advertise for that position and start seeking applicants. Are there questions on that?
So that's a full-time position, right?
Yes.
So what's gonna happen to Chris English's
He's
position?
retiring.
He's retiring.
Completely gone, okay.
Yes, he's retiring, and his position was changed down to a 30-hour a
Yeah,
week.
part-time, yeah.
Yeah. So with his retirement, we were looking to advertise and hire somebody back to full-time
Full-time,
status,
yeah.
and would also have the title of assistant town manager.
This was one of, Lindsay's not with us this evening, but that was one of her questions, is what do we do if Kathleen's out sick or when she
yeah.
goes on vacation, which we want to insist on vacations, so we really need to get somebody hired and trained in that position.
I agree.
I'd love to make the
Pleasure
motion.
of the board.
I'd love to make the motion. I move to accept Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey's recommendation to reconstitute the Assistant Town Manager position as part of the updated staffing plan for her office.
Second.
All in favor?
I'll second it too,
Dan gets
just so.
We got
Yeah,
dual seconds.
yeah,
You got all 3, you have 3.
Too bad.
Esther, jump in here and you can
Can't do it
second
for
it
him.
too.
I know, I was going to.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
The other matter that we discussed was updating the staffing model for the finance office so that it clarified what roles each position in the staffing office was doing, and who was doing what, and I didn't remember. So one suggestion I had was putting hours so we had a better sense of the number of hours associated with each job, and that will come. But overall, we have the Personnel Committee is recommending to the board that they approve Kathleen's recommendation of the staffing of the finance office and the roles and who's responsible for what. Are there questions?
And we got that at the last.
So this
last
isn't
meeting, too.
actually adding people, it's the roles and responsibilities and
Yes.
and some shift of duties.
Yes.
And it's been a comment on some of our past audits that we didn't have, we had some, but we didn't have
We didn't
like
have a good, like,
perfect
breakdown.
segregation of duties.
Yeah.
And with this one, the person who's writing the checks is not signing the checks, and, you know, it's really.
It's all
well-
good stuff.
I think it's really well done.
Yeah.
I think you'll like it. If you didn't look at it already, I think you'll be very happy with it. And
Yes.
certainly the auditors will be happy with it.
I am very happy with it. I would love to make a motion if I can find the verbiage here. I move to accept Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey's Finance Office staffing proposal, including the segregation of the accounting, billing, receipt processing, and treasurer functions.
Second.
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 Second. Everybody else did it, so.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Check warrants.
Yes. I reviewed all of the checks and warrants for the first time. Check warrants, I guess they're the same thing. It was fascinating. I really actually enjoyed spending that time flipping through pieces of paper. I'm glad I don't have to do it every other week.
Oh, I was gonna say.
But yeah, I'm not going to take yours, Dan.
I mean,
Yeah,
beat me
sorry.
to it, okay.
Yeah, but anyway, it was great. I had some questions. They were answered very quickly. And I move to approve the total expenditures in the amount of $442,218.29, consisting of $307,135.05 for accounts payable and $135,083.24 for payroll for the period July 26, 2022 through August 9th, 2022.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Board member concerns. Andy?
Whew, I'm good. I think I've talked enough.
Dan?
We talked about, my big one tonight was the Energy Committee. That was, and I thought that was good. I do have a question of the current water leak of the numerous gulags we have. It's right where Champlain has been working. They actually worked there last week, but there's a different contractor there repairing it. Their equipment is sitting right there, and it was relevant to what they were doing. So what happened?
I'll have to get back to you on that.
Oh, that's right. You have people that work for you that make those decisions, don't you? So, I just thought it was in, huh?
Still not fixed, my wife says she's still.
Oh,
Oh,
I said
no.
midnight. Midnight.
Yeesh.
So I
They didn't
just,
have to dig a new hole. They just had to take out new dirt out of a old hole.
I don't know if I'm overstepping, but I think that there is an approved list of after-hours
And they're not one?
vendors for doing that type of work that Bill calls from, I think, and I don't know what the situation is, but
Champlain was digging 15 feet from that spot today, all day, because we had one lane through there, didn't we, Leanne? All
Like I
day.
said,
all-
I'll get back to you.
That's okay, that's okay. I was just curious.
What would happen on site?
Okay, Farhad?
I have no concerns. I'm just excited about the farmer's market coming downtown. I hope it does. Our downtown needs to be revived. Middlebury needs to be revived, and that's a good step to take, I think.
You know, one thing I noticed, and I've always, they're always closing up just as I'm getting out of work, and so I go.
Yep.
Now, once they get down there, maybe we can get them extended an hour or an hour and a
hope so.
half or
I
something,
really hope so.
Yeah.
you know? Heather?
I'm good.
Esther?
Good, thank you.
Welcome. Okay. Heather, can you take us into executive session?
Sure. Now that I just closed the, yes. Oh, I got it. It's right here.
Good night.
In
Thanks
accordance
for coming.
with Vermont's open meeting law requirements, I move that the board find that premature general knowledge of the consideration of personnel matters and contracts would clearly place the select board at a substantial disadvantage because the select board risks disclosing its litigation strategy if it discusses the personnel matters and contracts in public.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I further move that the board enter into executive session to discuss personnel matters and contracts under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of the Vermont statutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're going into executive session at 9:25.